Hi folks, just ticking over the hour now, so welcome aboard to our webinar today, Technology Strategies to Drive Digital Business Transformation. My name is Hayden McCall and I'll be moderating today's session. We'll switch very quickly to introducing the panelists. Tim Sheedy. Tim is Principal Analyst serving CIOs at Forrester. He's based in Sydney. And we have Tim's the main presenter, but a 10-minute slot at the end with Stephen Irecki, Solutions Engineering Manager, also based in Sydney for Interactive Intelligence. Interactive Intelligence being the sponsor for today, so a big shout out thanks for them for making today possible. Very quick housekeeping, and the main item that typically comes up, yes, this session is being recorded. It will be emailed out to you as a link tomorrow, so if you do need to go, you'll get the full presentation, an hour's long video for your viewing pleasure. We will have time for the end for Q&A, so encourage you to get questions through using the questions pane on your little sidebar with the GoToWebinar tool, and just open that up, type away and fire those through. Okay, without further ado, I'll hand over to Tim. Tim Sheedy, you there?
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, hi guys, it's Tim Sheedy. I'm, as mentioned, a Principal Analyst with Forrester Research. I'm presenting today on the technology strategies that organisations are taking here in Australia, New Zealand and across the region to drive the digital transformation in their own businesses. And that's sort of the reality of where a lot of us are at today, is that we're spending a lot of time, effort in trying to set those digital strategies and trying to adapt to our digital customers. Now I don't seem to have presenter rights yet, so Hayden, if you can just
yeah, let
hand that over to me.
Just playing around with my screen, so you've got control now. Once I let go of the mouse, I'll stop behaving myself. Okay, you should be all yours, Tim.
Awesome, thank you very much. So look, I'll jump straight into the content, and here is this is Forrester's beginning slide. This is what we preface every presentation with. So I apologise if you've seen this before, but we believe that this is really important. And what this slide ultimately describes is what organisations do to get competitive advantage in different eras or in different ages. And it talks about this, back 100 years ago was, for 50, 60, 70 years was the age of manufacturing, where it was the great manufacturers that dominated industry, that dominated business. And the reality back then, customers actually beat a path to their door. They didn't beat a path to our door. Customers beat a path to their door to get their products. That changed in the age of distribution, where suddenly, companies started beating a path to our door to get the products to us. So it was, you still had to obviously have a good product, but you needed to be able to distribute that product effectively. So it was those organisations that had a good product and a great distribution network that succeeded. The last 20 years or so, though, have been around information. And again, it's the organisations that could collect information and use that information, in aid of or sometimes against their customers. Who are the ones who succeeded? I often think of this as the era of loyalty programs, and loyalty programs often had very little to do with actual customer loyalty. They were more to do with actually collecting data from customers so they could use that against us in making us buy more stuff. And they were the successful organisations. But today, nearly anyone can get access to information. You can get it from Facebook, from Google. I know it hasn't rolled out in this part of the world yet, but I know up in Singapore, Singtel will sell you information about where your customers are, about when they walk past your store. So location information, context information, segmentation information, demographics, etc. All of this information is readily available to anyone, not just your own organisation, but to startup organisations too. So therefore, what do we have left to be competitive today? And the answer to that is all we have left is our customer relationship. That is our competitive advantage. customers will come back to us because we treat them well, because we give them a delightful experience. That is ultimately what, as organizations and even as government departments, what we need to be thinking is that we have to delight our customers. And so we talk about this idea that we are in the age of the customer. That is what every organization has to focus on. And we see that play out, and we see that play out very quickly across Australia and New Zealand in particular over the last couple of years. And to give you an example, a couple of years ago we had a customer experience event in Sydney, and we had I guess a bunch of 25 to 35-year-olds in the room. We asked the question around who had budget for CX, and not many people did. Fast forward 2 years, there are now CXO roles reporting straight into the CEO. It's the area of the biggest investment. It's the area of biggest focus. These people are being given control over technology budgets, over marketing budgets, et cetera, product budgets. Customer experience is suddenly becoming a really important role, and we're even starting to see CX experts move into the CEO role as organizations realize that our job is to provide a great customer experience. We do that, and success will come from there. Now, how does that relate to digital? Well, the reality is that our customers today are digital. Now, we talk about this digital era. All we are really saying, when people talk about the need to transform to digital, all we're really saying is that more of our customer interactions happen with our organizations on digital platforms versus the real world. And that's changed, right? You just go back 2, 3, 4 years, and probably maybe the web was 15, 20, 30% of your interactions with your customers, and you still had a lot of face-to-face. I now look at my interactions with Qantas, which is the airline I use most of the time. And I book my tickets online. I find my seat online. I book the hotel online, often through Qantas's site. I check in online. I do my loyalty program and manage my miles and upgrades, etc. online. The only physical part of my experience with Qantas these days is the actual flight, right? So, for every flight I do, I probably have 15, 20 digital transactions with them. So that's what's changing now. So in an era where we have to delight our customers are digital, well, we have to become digital businesses. And the big change for us is that we've built a business around the real-world customer. We've built a business with call centers and agents and sometimes storefronts or face-to-face salespeople, etc. That is how our businesses operate. That's how our processes are set, right? And then we start to think about this digital transformation. You start to realize that this isn't just changing that front-end customer experience. It's changing the whole way that our business operates. And obviously we're starting to see a change in the digital platforms that people are using and the digital touch points. And across Australia and New Zealand, next year, more than 50% of online sales, of online retail, will happen from mobile on tablet. And again, that's accelerated very quickly from probably 5 to 10% 3 or 4 years ago. So you're starting to see mobile as becoming the primary touch point in which we have to serve our customers. We're also seeing the need to, even where there are online sales, in-store sales, the vast majority of them are still influenced, or well, not the vast majority, but the majority are influenced online. Our products themselves are becoming digital too, right? And this is a big change organizations are going through. And I spoke to Miele recently. Many of you probably know Miele, the appliance manufacturer. And maybe something you don't know about their products is that nearly every one of their products has a USB port. And when you have a problem, the service person will come out, plug their computer in, analyze that problem, and tell you what's wrong. Now, I guess Miele, as a firm that's trying to be more customer obsessed, realized that that's not a good outcome for the customer. Right? They're a product firm, but like many businesses, they've built very large revenue streams around the service piece, and that whole revenue stream is about it's an unnecessary revenue stream. It's a revenue stream that the customers don't want. It's a revenue stream that we spend money and we're disappointed with that spend, right? So, their latest generation of products rolling out in Germany at the moment are mobile connected. And the analytics from the machine go back to Melee, and they are starting to reach out to customers and inform them that you're using too much detergent in your washing machine, for example. If you use less detergent, it means you won't need a service call, or your dishwasher needs to be put through a clean cycle. If you don't do it in the next month, we're going to have to send an agent out to fix it because you'll probably have a problem with it, right? So they are happily cannibalizing a whole revenue stream of theirs in order to delight their customers. So they're putting these sensors in their machines. They're making their products digital. And our operations themselves are becoming digital too. I won't talk too much about that, but I'll be talking more about the things we need to do, particularly around our technology operations, in order to drive digital business later in the presentation. But digital businesses are different. And how are they different? Well, to start with, what is a digital business? And that's a company that continuously exploits digital technologies to both create new sources of value for customers and increase operational agility in service of those customers. So we see that there are two sides to digital there, that there is this customer-facing piece, that we have to digitize that customer experience and broaden our, add ourselves into that customer ecosystem in order to provide the value to the customers. But then there's also things we have to do to our back end, to our systems and processes, to become a truly digital business. How digital businesses are different than traditional ones is summarized quite nicely on these slides. We still see a lot of businesses thinking of digital as a channel for the customer. That we have, for example, we have retail, we have web, we have mobile, we have call center, for example, and maybe terminal or something like that as our channels to the customer. And the reality is that in a truly digital world, which our customers live in, digital should be part of every one of those channels. If you've heard me present before, you've probably heard this IKEA example that I use. That it'd be great to have an app that'll help you get around IKEA to find the products, to understand how many of those products are left down in the warehouse, to help me find it in the warehouse, to help me maybe check out on my smartphone. But really, where digital adds significant value in that IKEA process is when I actually get home and have to put that product together, right? When I'm constructing that bookshelf or bed or whatever it is that I bought, it'd be great that if I could use that same mobile app, scan the barcode or QR code, and show me a video of how to actually construct that thing, right? And have it there on my smartphone, not need me to go up to my computer or laptop in order to get this information. And let's say, there's a part that isn't in the box, like click a button in the app that says these screws are missing, please send them out. Right? That's thinking about digital as part of the whole customer experience, not as a bolt-on piece. In terms of the way we operate as organizations, traditional ones are trying to become functionally efficient as IT departments have spent a lot of time, automating and making processes and systems much more efficient over the last 20 years. Digital businesses, though, think of agility. That is their big challenge. Is how do we get different parts of the organization to work with each other more effectively? How do we change quickly when the market or the customer changes on us?
Hey, Tim,
then there's
the
tech.
Sorry, I'll cut you off. I've just had a little note saying that the audience is looking at your notes view, and I think I've got a little issue with swapping the presenter and slideshow views. So sorry to interrupt you, and sorry, audience. That looks better. Okay, carry on. Sorry, Tim.
Oh, seeing behind the kimono, are they? The notes. If it makes you feel any better, I'm not someone who actually puts notes in presentations, so they are someone else's notes, and often I wasn't even aware that they existed. But I will continue on. Thank you. So, so the technology attitude is an interesting one. That I often see this sitting around with groups of CIOs in particular. They really security comes out a lot in the discussion, and managing costs and decreasing budgets. Not that that's not a challenge for a digital business, but the reality is a digital business is focusing their technology attitude on speed and innovation. That we have to do things faster. We have to be more innovative in the way we do things. And the value proposition of a traditional business is we need to make better products. That's the focus. If we make better products, our customers might buy more of them. A digital business is not just thinking about their product, but they're thinking about the whole ecosystem of value of the customer. So what we really mean by that is that often the product or service that your customer uses, and whether that's an end user or a business or government or whoever is the ultimate organization you're servicing, often your product or service is actually just a step or a piece of that customer journey. A digital business is actually looking, well, how do I integrate with that entire customer journey? How do I actually help the customer achieve what they're trying to achieve in this particular customer journey, not just being a point product or a solution in that particular journey? So, these are sort of the standard organizations that you often see on slides, around the digital disruptors. I put these in as a nice segue to this slide, and this data is pretty old, but it just, to me, really identifies, what happens when you do digital well. So this slide is just the guest nights booked on Airbnb. In 2008, they were getting one a day. 2009, every 5 minutes. 2010, one every minute, one every 10 seconds, and one every 2 seconds in 2012. And obviously, it has accelerated from there. When you do digital business well, it really does, grow rapidly. And I've even seen this with the banks across Australia and New Zealand. They've talked about this whole idea that, how they used to take a huge amount of their systems offline, from 10 o'clock at night to do the backup, etc., of their data and the backup of their systems. And the reality is that mobile broke that, because they were starting to see a huge amount of transactions happening around 11 o'clock at night, just before people go to bed, or when they're sitting on the couch watching TV. And so suddenly they had to actually change their entire IT backup systems and processes, because they were seeing this exponential growth in transactions outside of many of the traditional hours that they were working. This is just another example. This is Wealthfront, an investment firm, compared to Charles Schwab, and this is how quickly they got to $1 billion of assets under management. Wealthfront's obviously a digital investment platform. Again, this data is a few years old. I believe it took less than a year to double that, to get to $2 billion under asset management. So, again, this whole idea of when you do digital and you do digital well, you can often get exponential growth in your customers. And this is where we see that, digital companies and traditional companies act differently. Again, the traditional ones, they don't move quickly to make these slow changes. They don't experiment. And that's because experimentation is hard, because they've got these big, heavy, clunky platforms in the back end, and they've got processes that are really hard to change, in their employees and staff, and they're really risk averse. And we see that particularly as a factor in traditional organizations in Australia and New Zealand, where digital firms are the opposite of that. They experiment a lot, right? That they fail a lot. Failure is okay, right? I hate to use Google as an example because they're an obvious one, but how many products has Google pulled? They pull products every couple of months because they tried it, it didn't work. Yes, they might have some customers of it, but it didn't reach mass market, so they'll pull that product. And they're obviously much more risk tolerant as businesses, and they make fast, frequent changes. It was the statistic I heard from Amazon for their AWS platform is that I think they're rolling out some sort of change across their platform every second of every day. But that's how quickly they are rolling out change in their platforms. Now, when you think of how quickly we update our platforms internally in our own data centers, often every month or year, as opposed to every minute or second. So what are we doing here in Australia, New Zealand, and across the region to drive digital transformation? Well, I won't be talking to all these, but having gone and spoken to a lot of organizations over the last 3 or 4 months, here are the 5 things that we see people focusing on, and they're starting with a digital strategy. They're going, well, if the organization doesn't have one, then I, as a CIO or head of the IT or business technology department. We have to take the lead on that. They are trying to understand what are their gaps. So, in terms of digital maturity, so we see them starting to demand digital maturity assessments. IT people are starting to show an interest in the things happening in your marketing and customer experience teams. You're starting to align to customer journey maps. Where there isn't a customer journey map, I'm even seeing IT departments start to lead the initiative of, let's understand the customer journey. Let's understand the pain points and the friction in that customer journey, and let's explore how we can use digital technologies to remove friction from that customer journey. Because in that customer journey, that's what digital does. It removes friction from that journey, and therefore, you delight the customer more, and they're more likely to come back to you and buy your product or service again. We see CIOs having made some wins on the front end, helping their organizations with mobile apps and better websites and other digital capabilities for customers. They're starting to see the back end as the real inhibitor to their organization becoming truly digital. So they're focusing on that, and I'll spend a fair bit of the rest of the presentation talking about that. And some are creating this digital acceleration team, which I won't be talking about, but feel free to reach out to me after the presentation if you're after more information on any of these points. So the digital strategy. I'm starting off with a few stats. We see that around a quarter of firms, report they have a holistic digital strategy. So a digital strategy, that goes across the whole business. For around half, basically have a limited digital strategy. 21% of firms have, believe they have 21% of the people we surveyed in businesses believe they have the right people setting the strategy. So that's a point of concern. That's 80% saying, well, we have a strategy, but it wasn't actually set by the right people who actually understand our customers and their needs. Only 16% feel that they have the skills to deliver on that strategy. And nearly 70% of executives say that the functional boundaries, the silos in their business are inhibiting their digital maturity. So yes, whilst we're starting down this journey to digital, there are some challenges, some real issues that we do have to overcome. Where we see people often start around digital is they start to set a roadmap of, okay, we have to become a digital business. What are the things we're going to do to become a digital business? And they set a roadmap for that digital business. And that's a problem. If you're doing that, stop that, is our recommendation. Because a roadmap isn't a strategy. A roadmap, if you think, very simple, if you think of a road takes you in a certain direction. The reality of digital is your customers can change overnight. You could have a new competitor overnight. The market could change on you, over a period of days, weeks, months, right? If you have a roadmap, that roadmap's only going to take you in one direction, right? So you find that a single, announcement in the market, a single new competitor may disrupt everything you are doing on that roadmap. So don't start there. We recommend that you start, with a strategy. And what's in that strategy? Well, there's a vision. It's great if you could come up with some video or multimedia piece that really excites the organization, the employees of, here's what we're going to be like, here's how we're going to delight our customers, with an understanding that, the things in that video might not pan out exactly as you see at the moment, but you are setting up an organization to deal with that. But beneath that vision, you have a digital customer experience and a digital operational excellence strategy. And these are the things you're doing to drive that customer experience and the operational excellence. You have the capability map of, here are our building blocks in our business that we will call on these capabilities when we need them. And the idea of this versus the tactics or the roadmap is that we're thinking that, we have these capabilities that we'll call on as they're required. Some of them might not be required for a while. Some of them might only be required if certain market conditions call on that or certain changes happen. And then you have the business case for change. And where this all rolls out are in these components down the bottom, around the culture, the organization, the technology, and the measurement. This is where digital strategy becomes digital strategy, right? This becomes real. these are the things you have to change. You have to change your culture. You have to change the way your organization works today. You're going to have to change the technology platforms and obviously the way you measure the success of your organization and those platforms too. So in terms of these two sides of IT, this digital customer experience and digital operational excellence, we see that there are these two ends, and I'll talk a little bit about the customer experience before we move on to operational excellence, and then I'll be spending a lot of time talking about cloud, or the last 10 minutes or so talking about cloud. So I talked about this whole idea of the ecosystem of value that we have to deliver services within. And I'm using United here because I think they're a really great example that they get this. They get that people don't want to go from airport A to airport B. They get that people want to go from their home in one city to a hotel in another city, or from a hotel in one city to an office in another city. But that is what people are doing when they travel. And so what they have done is actually integrated Uber into their app, and you can see that in the United app here on this screen you see that Uber button. That doesn't launch the Uber app. What that does is actually launch an integrated experience that recognizes that, Tim, you're at home at the moment. I can see from your booking, you're flying from Sydney to Wellington at 2 o'clock this afternoon, so I'll book an Uber for you, to get you to the airport at 2 hours beforehand. And then I can see in Wellington you're staying at this particular hotel. What's my favourite hotel in Wellington? I do have a favourite one there. That you're staying at this particular hotel, and so we'll organise an Uber on the other end for when your plane lands to pick you up and take you to that hotel. So they realise that they are part of this ecosystem of what the customer is actually trying to achieve. And you can see from this next slide that even what they are doing at the moment is still only a small chunk of that total experience of, let's say, I want to go on a holiday, or I'm traveling for business, right? That there are many other things that they are going to be looking at and expanding into and offering those capabilities and partnering for those capabilities so they can help that customer with that end-to-end experience, not just, well, come to me when you want that airline component. Another piece is digitizing the end-to-end experience. And this, if anyone has seen this app, this is a really cool app, right? So this is a Makeup Genius app. It's made by L'Oreal, and I love this app because it disrupts the way the market works so much. And look, I'm not someone who buys much in the way of makeup, or any in the way of makeup, to be honest with you. But I've had it explained to me that let's say you're a woman, you've got made up to go to the office that day, you go out to a department store at lunch to try on some makeup. You want to try on 5 different lipsticks. That involves wiping off 5 different lipsticks, right? Or 5 different eyeshadows, etc., right? That you have to remove, and then when you go back to the office, you actually get to go back to the look that you had on that day because it matched your particular clothing or look that you had at that time. So buying makeup, as explained, is a pretty clumsy process, and it's one right to be disrupted. The other thing I love about this is L'Oreal is an organisation that has typically no contact with their customers. They sell to distributors or wholesalers who sell to retailers who sell to the customer. Right? They are a number of steps removed from the customer. However, they've developed this app, and in this app, you can try on individual pieces of makeup, or you can actually try on looks in this. And so let's say it's a look that you saw on a catwalk in some fashion show, for example. You can try that look on, and importantly, you can then fulfill that. And this is where they're bringing a partner into the ecosystem, because L'Oreal does not sell direct. So they're in Australia that they're bought in Priceline.com.au as their fulfillment partner. So if you like that look, you can actually try that on. You can actually add that to your cart and buy that straight away. And I've actually got some examples here, and this is ones I found online. And this is all virtual makeup. So it takes in real time, it shows you that makeup on yourself, and you literally swipe from one side to another side. The one side, you just swipe across to try on the different looks. All the looks that this lady has tried on, she might have tried them all on in 30 seconds. right? And it tracks you. It moves with you. It's not taking a photo. It actually, you can see it from the side. You can see it from the front. It is a really cool app. And for me, it really describes well of digitizing that end-to-end customer experience in order to take as much friction out of that experience as possible and to delight your customers. However, as I mentioned already, that customer experience piece, the front end, is only the beginning of the journey. We need to start focusing on our back-end systems because, it's often our back-end systems that are slowing us down, and many organizations on this call probably built mobile apps. And suddenly you have all this great data, right? You know where your customers are, you know what products they're looking at, you know what time of the day they're looking at, you know that this product is more popular than that product. But then you go, well, what do I do with that information? And you go back to your marketing team, and your marketing team currently runs ads on TV and in magazines that live in the market for a month to 3 months, right? And you're going, but we've got real-time data. We can do real-time marketing. And you're going, well, it's the way our organization works. We're not a digital company. Yes, we might have digitized that customer experience, but we can't actually respond to that in a digital manner, right? We can't give real-time offers. We can't let our distributors, retailers, wholesalers know that there's a massive demand for this product because we're seeing a lot of spike in the mobile app, and so ship a lot of that product to that store or to that part of the country, for example. This is our back end that's slowing us down. So what do we need to do? We said that there are 3 major factors we have to focus on. We have to look at the whole dynamic ecosystem. So again, instead of that front-end customer-facing ecosystem, we need a back-end ecosystem. We need to better integrate with our partners and have the ability to easily integrate with anyone who wants to partner with us. We need rapid customer-centric innovation. We need to be able to test ideas with our customers, for example, have our customers lead some of our thinking, and be able to respond to that and respond to that customer-led innovation quickly. And that's it. Again, you can have an innovation program, but then when it says, okay, well, in order to offer this new service, we need these new fields in our CRM, and we need these new capabilities in our call center to be able to do that. If we look at the way our back-end systems work today, that might be a 6-month to 2-year process to do that, right? So those changes might take a long time to drive through. So we need to then digitize for that agility over efficiency of our back-end, and that's certainly where cloud will come into it. So I have mentioned this one already. I won't spend much time on this slide because I really want to jump into this conversation around cloud. But what we're seeing organizations do here, we're seeing organizations start to wrap their existing systems in APIs, right? So therefore, external organizations can integrate with them, can call on their services. Their own organization, their own staff can create new capabilities, new services easily by calling on APIs as opposed to this whole idea of hard coding end-to-end processes. So that's sort of where we're seeing a lot of change around that ecosystem to drive change. But where we are seeing absolutely the most activity in Australia and New Zealand across and across Asia Pacific is a wholesale move to cloud computing. I'm pretty certain that there isn't a company on this call that hasn't made some investment in cloud, and the bunch of companies on this slide, is just an example of organizations across Asia who are investing in cloud apps, in cloud backends, in cloud infrastructure, and cloud platforms and development tools. This is there are some very interesting statistics around how Australia in particular is the 2nd most cloud penetrated market globally, and because Australia and we're seeing this in New Zealand too, came from a fair way behind, compared to the US and Canada and North America. Therefore, we're seeing a rapid acceleration in the take-up of cloud services. So, why are people moving to cloud? Well, we need to be fast. We need to be agile. Technology departments, CIOs, were seeing that they didn't have a seat at the table anymore, that they were being seen as too slow. Organizations who'd hired chief digital officers and given this digital officer bunches of cash to go and build new technology capabilities because of the failure of the IT department to move at the speed of the customer, to respond. And so this is our way of getting back on the, at that table. This is our way of going from a follower to a leader in our organization in driving that digital transformation. It's giving us that speed and agility. It's certainly freeing up resources, and it's making us more responsive. Now, one of the pieces that I will talk about with cloud that often isn't discussed around cloud computing is what anyone in your organization, that if you talk to them today who've used cloud computing for 3, 4, 5 years, they will talk about the benefits of cloud being nothing that was in the RFP at all, right? They probably chose that platform, that software, that infrastructure capability for features and functions, right? That might have been why they chose it. They might have chosen it to save a bit of money. But they will now tell you about how cloud drives innovation. I spoke to an organization who's using an ERP in the cloud, and they talk about this idea that they found it really hard to sell internationally. And one day they came in and their cloud ERP platform had enabled cross-border transactions much more easily, and the reporting of that to tax departments and the exchange rates on that, etc., was managed much more elegantly than the way it was managed quite literally the day before in that platform. So suddenly a company that was selling primarily to a single economy can start to sell globally, right? Suddenly, and this is what people talk about, the value of cloud, having used it. They say we can now, the cloud vendors are driving innovation in our business. They're switching on capabilities that were never even imagined when we bought this platform, when we put this platform into our organization. And those capabilities are enabling us to do things differently, to enabling us to innovate, to create better services for the customer, to be able to relate to our customers better, have better analytics for our customers, for example. So this is something that often isn't talked about with cloud. It's hard to put that into a business case, but we see that cloud really does drive innovation in organizations. This is a quote from a head of group strategy and architecture at a global bank. This is someone who was actually based in region. But they said, we see a direct correlation between cloud and speed or agility. Faster, quicker deployment, bypassing traditional build models, rapid prototyping, and quick releases. Again, I spoke to an organization who moved to the infrastructure and sort of platform as a service. And they said, when we first went to the cloud, we got agile, we got faster, right? That we were doing things that were taking us, I think, a week in their data center, they could do in a day in the cloud. And they said, so that was great. But they said, now we are using the cloud for what we can really use it for. We're using the developer tools, the platforms, the software, the capabilities of the cloud. That thing that used to take a week and then took a day, we are now doing 170 times an hour in the cloud, right? So it's not just the speed of moving to the cloud, it's these further capabilities and agility that the cloud will drive in your organization. Where organizations typically start with cloud is around software as a service, and they get these sorts of benefits. So this is responses globally and in Asia. Things like improved business agility, better sharing collaboration, getting functionality to market faster, speed of deployment, new capabilities for innovation, and sort of nearly less importantly down the bottom are the cost pieces. Some organizations save money in the cloud, some didn't, right? But they are just as happy with their cloud deployment often because they're driving enhanced business capabilities. They're selling more. They're selling faster. They're finding new customers because of the things that they got when they moved to the cloud. So what we do in our organization to enable this, to enable cloud computing is, I guess, stop being barriers to it. Stop worrying about cloud computing as something that's going to take our jobs, that's going to make us redundant. well, we are doing research into public cloud services at the moment in Australia and New Zealand, and we've barely spoken to an organisation that actually got rid of a staff member when they moved to cloud. Yes, new skills were required, but that person who used to be a data center engineer is now being called an automation engineer. Their job is to make things run faster in the cloud. Their job is to use the cloud architectures more effectively. It's no longer about walking around a data center. So, empower that employee self-service. Embrace your employees trying things differently. I heard, we spoke to an organisation here in Australia that had that sort of traditional 4-region sales team, north, south, east, west. And they had, a bunch of people in the northern team who'd found a particular cloud capability that helped them identify customer opportunities and sell them faster. And interestingly, in I think their western team, a group had actually found a different cloud capability. So instead of shutting them down and saying, no, you have to do it our way, they went, well, how about we play them off against each other? How about we work out which sales team is getting better advantage from this platform? And then, then once we've decided that that is the right platform for our business, roll that out across all 4 of the sales teams. So look, I won't focus. I've spoken to a lot of the points on those slides, so I'll move on.
Yeah, Tim, just conscious of time with Steve's presentation, about 10 minutes. So yeah, we're just 16 minutes to top of the hour, so just aware of that.
Yeah, look, I've talked about a lot of these. We've got to get in front of this, and that's what IT departments are doing. We're starting with a cloud policy. Most companies that we speak to are now cloud first. That is their new policies. We are a cloud first organisation, and we only go on premise or in a data center by exception. You'll probably get vendor lock-in in the cloud. We see people talk about, I'm worried about vendor lock-in in the cloud, and then going and signing, a 4-year deal for something on premise in their own data center. You're going, well, so vendor lock-in, yes, it's real, but in the cloud, at least you're getting the benefits of being in the cloud, the new innovations, the new capabilities, and hopefully the lower cost too. And so the key takeaways. I will focus primarily on this cloud piece. It's, cloud is how organizations today, or how IT organizations are responding to the digital challenge. Right? We are making, this is a wholesale change. It's not just new applications in the cloud. It is existing applications that we're moving across. I've spoken to plenty of organizations that are, migrating their SAP, their Oracle instances to the cloud. This isn't just, this isn't just the new things we're doing, the edge stuff we're doing in the cloud. These are a significant move to the cloud. And the market leaders, the digital leaders, are standardizing around certain cloud platforms. If we look at this, that's where often where you get benefits. Unless you're a software company yourself, being cloud agnostic often doesn't deliver huge benefits to your organization. And they're driving as much automation in that cloud platform as they can. And the final point is, if this is you, then this is a problem, because a data center doesn't give your business competitive advantage. That a lot of the things we do in IT don't create a better customer experience, right? Those back-end things don't. So we need to focus as technologists, we need to focus on delivering services, deliver business technology that helps our company win, serve, and retain customers. That's where the benefit's going to be, not in actually running hardware and systems. And also just recognizing that, as I made that point around the digital strategy and roadmap, that, this is a journey. We will continue doing this. We need the systems and platforms and culture and organization and metrics that will enable us to continue on that journey. It's not a destination that we're heading towards. So I will finish there and hand over to Stephen. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Thank you, Tim. Lots of information to digest there and a bunch of questions that get raised along the way. But let's quickly fire into handing across to Stephen Irecki as Solutions Engineering Manager for Interactive Intelligence based in Sydney. Tim's going to talk about transforming with the cloud, or cloud plural, as the presentation goes. So let me just hand across to you, Tim. I'll give you some mouse control and then also bring up your presentation. Just out of there. Where are we going there? Boom. Okay, sorry about that. A little stuttery. Steve, over to you.
Great, thank you very much, Hayden. I think we may need to just adjust the display settings again. Just let me do that.
Okay, yeah, that's nice that it swaps just whenever you bring up a new presentation, just to keep me on my toes.
There you go. Okay, so my name is Stephen Irecki. I'm a Solutions Engineering Manager at Interactive Intelligence. I lead a team of SCs, or pre-sales guys, who go out and meet prospects and customers every single day. We're talking to CEOs, CIOs, IT managers about them transforming their businesses to the cloud. So there's a lot of information that I can share with you. I'm going to try and keep my presentation down to about 7 or 8 minutes so we can have some time for questions in the end. But what we're going to talk about today is essentially the different sort of attributes between cloud platforms and on-premise technologies, and also what to consider when you're reviewing your infrastructure and how to plan to transform to the cloud. So let's go and have a look at some of that stuff. So the first thing that we're going to focus on is the clouds, obviously, and we're going to focus mainly on that throughout the entire presentation. I just want to show you a quote first, which says more than 80% of frontline IT workers say they spend more than half of their time troubleshooting and maintaining legacy systems. It's a bit like that picture that Tim showed with an IT guy underneath all those cables. That's not something that you want happening in your business. That is the old world. That is the old guard, and you need to move to a place where that just gets eliminated. If we look at comparison between old sort of on-premise solutions and cloud solutions, I've come up with a few analogies just to try and describe the differences there. So we can see, I think even Tim touched on this, back in the 1900s when there was all those manufacturing plants around, they each had their own power station. And if you skip forward 30 years, a lot of those manufacturing plants decided to use power from a central utility. So obviously utilizing the central source to have this utility delivered to your site ended up being much more cost effective for a lot of those organizations. The second one that you see here is transport. So we each have our own cars, so we drive them probably 5–10% of the actual time. The other 90% of the time, they're stuck in our garage, they're in a parking slot, they're somewhere else. If you compare that to, say, a taxi, where these are shared resources, where you can actually rent one at any time you want, and then once you're finished, someone else can go and use it. This is analogous to the cloud as well. Very easy for these shared resources to give scalability and efficiency of resources as well. The next one is money. So if I were, well, I store my money in the bank. I'm not sure about everyone else. But if I were to store it at home, I wouldn't have the funds or the intelligence or the know-how to have any sort of security cameras, procedures in place, or security guards. I cannot get that level of security that a bank can provide me. And this, we're going to speak a little bit around security later, is analogous to the cloud as well. And lastly, animals. So this is my favorite. You can actually treat your current infrastructure on your site, your on-premise stuff, as your pets. If they get sick, if they need some help, you nurse them back to health, you patch them, you upgrade them, you do whatever you need to do to actually get them working again. The cloud sort of changes that on its head, and instead of having the concept of pets, your servers, your infrastructure, they're all like cattle. And if one actually fails or gets sick, you don't nurse it back to health, you kill it. And essentially you move on. And you spin up a new server in its place, because the scalability of the cloud is very easy to do that. So those are just a few analogies to touch on why people would go to the cloud. You can see this is just a recent Gartner report around the different cloud platform providers which are out there. No surprise, the likes of Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure are towards the top. And they offer a lot of technologies within their cloud platforms which enable businesses to leverage a whole bunch of stuff in the cloud. If we move on a little bit to the next slide. My internet seems to be a bit slow. We're going to have a look at some cloud considerations. So here we can see some options, what to consider when you're actually moving to the cloud. So reliability is one of them. Obviously, within your own premise, you could probably achieve a good amount of reliability, but surprisingly, or not surprisingly, these cloud service vendors also get a huge amount of reliability. So you can see Amazon Web Services was, I think, in this particular example, back in 2014, down to 2.4 hours of downtime throughout the entire year, which equated to 4 or 5 nines or something like that, which is pretty good. So that's one thing to consider. Another thing to consider is agility, flexibility, and scalability. So these are things that Tim touched on as well. So you can see some examples in this slide where a customer had a Wall Street app which they had hosted on the cloud, and during the day, during business hours, this Wall Street app would use up to 300 server instances, of 3,000 server instances. But then at night and on the weekends, it would scale right back down to a factor of 10, down to 300. There's no way you can architect such a solution on-premise to be able to deal with that type of flexibility and agility. And then if you look at the example on the right of a video application, you can see in the cloud, this little video company launched a Facebook modification on the Friday, and within 2 days, by the Sunday, it had scaled from 1,000 sort of server instances to 5,000 server instances, managing all the load. There's, again, no way you could actually have that type of scalability on the premise using your own sort of infrastructure. Security is also a massive thing as well. So it's not only the certifications that you can see on the screen there, but it's things like data connections, encryption, password hashing, those types of things which become very important. And most often than not, a lot of the certifications that these cloud vendors provide, the likes of Amazon and Azure and stuff, you can leverage through your applications. So if you do come to a cloud provider, software provider such as Interactive Intelligence, ourselves, we leverage a lot of the existing certifications which exist on the cloud, enabling us to provide a great deal more security than what we would actually be able to provide on a premise solution or on our own hosted solution as well. So that's another key consideration. Another one that I just want to talk about briefly was how applications are actually architected in the cloud. Where previously a lot of these old monolithic applications, they would be architected in a approach which are tightly coupled sort of applications, which means that if something fails, most often than not, it will take down the entire system. Everything is very tightly interdependent on each other. Where a lot of these new cloud applications developed on these cloud platforms, they're loosely coupled. They use a methodology of microservice sort of architecture. If one fails, there's another one waiting right behind it, which has a lot of advantages. It means that instead of vertically scaling all of your infrastructure on site, you're horizontally scaling it on the cloud, utilizing the scalability that it provides. Instead of having maintenance windows to do upgrades and patches on your infrastructure on site, you actually have no downtime. There's a continuous delivery of new features and functionality and patching into the application on this cloud service. Next one, instead of, oops, just waiting for the internet to catch up. Instead of resiliency by adding additional servers on site, what you have instead is you have resiliency throughout the cloud. So a lot of these cloud platforms, they provide automatic resiliency out of the box just by hosting your application up there. And instead of having your applications geo-redundant in 2 data centers, these cloud platforms, they are inherently geo-redundant as well. If you spin up an application, most often than not, that is replicated to 3 or 4 different locations. So if one particular location fails, then the others can still deliver. So there's a lot of advantages of having those cloud-aware microservices applications. And you can see here even Forrester notes that it's the future to solution architecture, especially in the cloud, because it provides those things on the slide, such as continuous delivery, reliability, scalability, security, simplicity. So there's a lot of good advantages there. So what do you plan for in terms of changing to the cloud? Well, I've got a slide here around the different sort of vendors out there and the type of old guards and the new disruptors which are coming on the market. A common theme that you'll find with all these new disruptors is that they are cloud-based platforms. They do have microservices architectures. They do utilize all those benefits that we discussed before. So you want to be on this side. You do not want to be on this old guard side. What do you consider? I guess you have to consider the cloud first up, or which cloud provider and platform you go for. There's a lot out there. Some are more specified to certain tasks than others. But again, all around that is a whole bunch of different things which you need to consider as well. BCP, DR, the same considerations you take into account on your premise solution, you need to take into account in the cloud. Security, we've mentioned, scalability, agility, those are important concepts which need to be sort of understood and taken into account as well. Application architecture with the microservices. Is the actual software that you're utilizing from the cloud, is it an old monolithic application, or is it actually something which has been built for the cloud to leverage all of cloud components? How is this cloud solution being maintained? What connectivity do you have to the cloud as well? You have to think about things like WAN connectivity, QoS, and bandwidth now, because not all that infrastructure is localized on site. It's important to understand the licensing models as well. Is it going to be month to month? Is there any contracts? All that type of stuff. And also the clear delineation of responsibilities between your cloud provider and themselves. So just in summary, I just want to briefly talk to you about what we've done as an organization. We've moved a lot of our internal sort of systems to the cloud, but we've also decided to just disrupt ourselves and change our customer engagement solutions, call center, communication, collaboration solutions that we sell to our customers. And we've decided to get rid of all of this old monolithic products that we have and decided to essentially deliver all of our services out of Amazon Web Services, a distributed cloud platform. And in doing so, we've reaped the benefits and gained all the advantages that we've touched on today. So I'm going to end there just because of time, but hopefully that was a good introduction into the things that you need to consider for the cloud. And I'm going to hand over back to Hayden for any questions.
Great, thanks, Steve. Challenged on timing, but so be it. We're nearly into the top of the hour, but we'll let time run a little bit over. Keen to hear questions from the audience that the two presentations have stimulated. Just to get that ball rolling and use your sidebar, go to webinar, open up the questions, type in, hit send, and they'll come through to me to pose to the speakers. But just to get that ball rolling, a question that was actually raised in the registration, and it hasn't come up today. I suspect it came out of different research house terminology, so that may be the reason why, Tim. But bimodal IT seems to get a bit of an airing at the moment. This concept of running in a new cloud agile environment alongside of your old legacy safe systems that continue to clunk along. What's the validity of that model? Do you see that as being effective? Is that a transitory state that companies you would recommend to go through, or is it a leap in and have faith and courage?
Yeah, look, I think bimodal IT probably describes the current state of play for a lot of organisations. So you've got an IT department who's doing things slowly, and then you've got a chief digital officer who's been brought in to do the things that really matter for customers and the things that really matter in the business. And the chief digital officer has been given, as I said, bunches of budgets to effectively replicate the technology platforms and systems that already sit there in the IT department because IT runs slowly. I think that's describing what's happening. That's bad, right? That is not a good outcome, right? That's not a good outcome, obviously, for a CIO who is going to see that their job is going to be effectively become an infrastructure and back-end applications manager. And it's not good for the customer, because the reality is, find me a customer process or an organizational process that doesn't touch back-end systems, right? That doesn't touch what you would put in that flow zone, right? That zone that that it's okay to keep running that the old way, right? There isn't anything, right? Even HR, you may need to move to a new sourcing of skills in the market, for example, and you might need new platforms, so you can't even put your HR system, which is sort of one of the ones I tend to refer to as one of the slower platforms that that might sit in that slow part of the of technology. The reality is that I use an example with Qantas. I showed you that Qantas app that the new way of checking in is I don't even go to the app. I get sent a text message and I click a link and I say I'm not carrying anything dangerous and I'm checked in. Right? Now for me going into the app is a bad experience for my check-in process. Going to the app is annoying, right? So now I've moved on from the app to this new simpler way, and every now and then the text message doesn't arrive, right? And why was that? Well, it probably was a bit of slow IT, a router that had failed, or a server that had failed in the data center, or maybe a link into the telco partner or something like that. And that affected a customer outcome, right? So therefore, should that router be in zone 2 or the fast zone? Should those servers be in the fast zone? Suddenly you realize that, look, everything you do has to move quickly. And a lot of it is about the ability to change, right? So, some things don't change that much. I will acknowledge that. But when the change happens, it has to happen quickly. So everything has to be agile, right? So yes, there will be systems that might sit there for a year and not get touched and not change at all. But then a customer process will change, you'll get a new competitor, something will change in the market, and you have to change overnight, right? As opposed to, well, that's in that slow zone, so we'll do a 12 or 18-month process to make that change to that system. Right, so we see this bimodal IT. Yes, it sort of describes what we're doing, but what we're doing isn't good. Right? We need to change the way technology operates. We talk about the idea of focusing on business technology. That everything you do at some stage in IT helps the organisation win, serve, and retain customers. Right. So, and even someone who sits there in the data center with a screwdriver has a role at some stage in their day or week in helping the organisation drive business technology and those customer outcomes.
Yeah, look, it comes across as a significant mindset change that's required. Cultural change. It's down to the roots of the organisation. I mean, one of the slides that you put up, Tim, shone a very bright light on that. 16% of organisations think they've got the skills to deliver. That struck me as very low. Do you think that that's a reflection on the IT department's capabilities within the organisation, or the position of IT within the organisation, or the digital skills in the wider landscape?
No, that's the wider workforce, right? That is, that's people. I still speak to plenty of organisations that have people sitting in front of, what were green screens not that long ago, and maybe were just really an updated view of green screens that the same process been doing it the same way for 30 years. And digital comes along and tells them that everything has to change. And you know what? You might need to change the way you do things every 6 months or every month, right? And that's hard, right? Driving that change in those employees. So suddenly, change management, becomes a real business capability, right? It's not just something you do when you do a new project. Change management is something that the whole organization does the whole time, right? It becomes a core competency of your business. And it becomes part of the culture of your business too, but that's not easy to get to.
It's a very interesting point, isn't it? I mean, you say, the only differentiator we've got is our customer relationship, but actually, that change capability and agility is probably equally as important. The ability to respond to what your customers' experiences and deliver that relationship. Look, Ty, I've got one more question that came in from the floor. Sorry if questions have come in and I haven't addressed them. But just one point, I think, a recurring theme throughout both presentations. So Steve, maybe you can take this initially. Software as a service is kind of that, the cloud apps and easy jump on and self-provisioning and done by the afternoon I'm in, and I've now using a new CRM system is that I guess the ultimate in terms of what cloud is, but a lot of what we talk about is the back end, the hardware, getting rid of the server room, the nuts and bolts, and taking that into a cloud. Are they two different topics, or as came through today, it seems that actually you can't delineate one from the other. They're both part and parcel with the whole transition and transformation that we're talking about today.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how to answer that question, Hayden, but I think it is part and parcel, both of them together. I'll give it over to Tim.
Yeah, look, I'm sorry to jump in here, but yeah, having just spoken to a lot of organisations who've moved to the cloud, we did see some very clear triggers. You know, the number one reason why people moved to the cloud was an unwillingness to spend any more money in their data center, right? So they were really looking at the cloud as a lift and shift, right? You know, we don't want to spend any more money there, and they looked at the cloud as a new data center, right? And you know, reality hit home pretty soon in that transition that the cloud isn't a data center, right? That the cloud is a whole new way of architecting, of thinking about information and processes and applications. It's a whole new way of innovating and driving agility in your business. Every organisation we spoke to, when we said, "What are your learnings from the move to the cloud? What would you do differently?" Not everyone, but nearly every one of them said we would have moved much faster if we'd known about the benefits early on, right? So it is interesting. So we're seeing a common trigger. If you are at that point where you don't want to spend any more money in your data center, that might be your trigger to move to the cloud. It is very common, but what you find out very quickly is that sort of wasn't a good reason, because the benefit that you get from the cloud has nothing to do with with data centers basically, and it has everything to do with agility and innovation and the way you run your business.
Yeah,
I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, it is. Look, I think a lot of the conversation does focus on the cloud hosting aspect, but really that needs to move into the front end applications and all of those good things about the user at the other end, as opposed to the OTC.
And that's right. And look, don't get me wrong. People who are moving to the cloud to not spend money in their data center were also ones who are moving software to the cloud too, right? So this wasn't just an infrastructure discussion. This was we don't want to put this new platform in, or our existing platform's upgraded and it needs new capabilities in our data center. So that, as I said, it's not just that hosting piece, but certainly the software is a bigger driver of that discussion as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, gone over time, guys, so thank you very much for your inputs today and time contribution. Folks, for those of you that are still in the room, there's an exit survey as you go out of the browser session. You'll get popped up with a survey to complete. Really appreciate giving feedback on that, a little bit of insight in terms of what appealed today, and also just to help us to tailor things moving forward. So please complete that. Thanks today again to Interactive Intelligence for making today possible. Their contact details and website there, lots of resources and information on the website. They're very much a breadth of capability in cloud and contact center solutions that are all based in the cloud and facilitate some agility, and particularly in that contact center space. So worth checking out, and get in touch with them directly if you've got questions. Also, feel free to get in touch with me if you've got questions or want to follow up. Then I have obviously been the one sending you the emails with registration, so easy to reply on that. Feel free to do so if that's easier. Okay, we will send you a recording out, as I said at the outset. That'll be emailed to you tomorrow. Thank you everyone for attending, and we'll see you next time. Thanks very much. We'll get out now. Thanks again to Tim and to Steve.